The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly corporate glow over cubicle row 14B. Forkborn, not his real name, but the only one that mattered anymore, stared at his terminal, cursor blinking like a heartbeat, waiting to flatline.
"Can I see you for a moment?"
Came the voice from behind him, soft but loaded. It was the manager, always smiling, never blinking. Forkborn followed him down the corridor, past posters about synergy and quarterly alignment. In the small glass-walled conference room, the manager gestured toward the chair opposite him, like this was a normal check-in.
"We appreciate your passion for decentralization,
The manager said, dragging out each word like it was someone else's fault.
but this company needs focus. You're done. Friday."
The words didn't hit like a surprise. Forkborn had seen the Slack threads, the eye rolls during stand-up, the way Dick from Compliance, Richard Dick Dalton, always made a joke after every one of his suggestions. And right on cue, as he walked back to his desk with a cardboard box in hand, Dick leaned against the cubicle wall, sipping from his stupid ceramic mug that read, "I'm the liquidity."
You still simping that scam chain?
Dick sneered loud enough for the floor to hear.
Forkborn's gonna decentralize himself straight into unemployment?
Forkborn didn't answer. He didn't need to. Scene 2. The flip. By the time Forkborn reached the elevator, the box in his hands was mostly empty. Just a few notebooks, a decommissioned hardware wallet, and a sticker that read, "Fork it if you hate it." He didn't look back when the doors closed. He didn't need to. He'd already left that place weeks ago, mentally, ideologically. Now he just had the time to catch up. Home was cluttered but clean. Dual monitors glowed with heat maps, node graphs, and 5 Discord servers all half-muted. He tossed the box aside and sat down in the command chair, a second-hand gaming rig he'd upgraded with bounty tokens. The moment his fingers touched the keyboard, everything else disappeared. That night, the SEC dropped a bulletin. A Layer 1 chain, the same one Forkborn had been mining since testnet days, had just been publicly clarified as not a security. The market didn't blink. It exploded. Forkborn's wallet, once the punchline of office jokes, began pinging like a jackpot machine. Governance tokens, delegation rewards, forgotten airdrops. He stared at the numbers as if they were taunting him. Then he smiled. Not because he was rich. Because he wasn't surprised. By Wednesday morning, he was back in the building. Different suit, different badge, same floor, except this time he wasn't answering to anyone. He walked past reception without a glance. Past the break room where people used to avoid eye contact. Straight to the conference room where executives whispered into polycoms and drew little triangles on whiteboards. The CEO stood to greet him, face stiff with forced friendliness. Forkborn shook his hand like it was a formality, because it was. Richard Dick Dalton wasn't in the meeting, but Forkborn made sure to walk past his desk on the way out. Dick looked up from his monitor, blinking like a man waking up from a dream he didn't understand. Forkborn stopped just long enough to speak the words slowly, letting them hang in the recycled air. "You're fired. Friday." Revenge was easy. Building, that was harder. But Forkborn didn't come this far to settle scores. He came to fork the rules. The old firm was a trophy, a receipt, proof that conviction, if held long enough, eventually becomes capital. But ownership was never the endgame. It was the launch pad. By Thursday, he had spun up a new multi-sig. By Friday, he had called in the ghosts, coders from rugged DAOs, ex-validators, the quiet legends of DeFi who didn't tweet, didn't shill, but moved like architects in shadows. They met in encrypted streams and sidechains. They brought tokens, ideas, battle scars. Forkborn didn't lead them, he aligned them. "We forked it because they said it was broken," he told them during that first virtual summit. "We stayed because we believed. Now we govern it." They called it Forkborn Protocol, not a Layer 1, not a roll-up, a fork field, an omnidirectional mesh of sovereign nodes and meme-bound contracts. A place where abandoned tokens could reboot, where builders weren't just validators, they were owners of origin. It wasn't a product, it was a provocation. The launch wasn't announced, it just happened. Block Zero didn't show up on any explorer at first. Then came the Whispers, a transaction with zero gas, a multisig that approved itself, a token ID that minted its own rule set. Forkborn pushed the contract live himself, alone under soft LED light with only the low hum of his custom rig and the sharp scent of coffee gone cold. Deploy new contract, governance V2, confirmed. The terminal flickered. For a second, the screen pulsed with a line of block graffiti. All forks must begin somewhere. And just like that, Forkborn Protocol was real. The market didn't know what Forkborn Protocol was, but it knew something was happening. Fees dropped, latency vanished. Smart wallets began rerouting themselves, not by human command, but by incentive logic encoded in the memetic layer of the chain. At first, they called it a bug. Then they called it a feature. By the time they called it a threat, it had already processed 1 million contracts. Gasless delegation enabled, read the network update that no one authorized. Wallets began whispering to each other in fork script. Old tokens flared to life. NFTs from dead projects started pulsing with embedded state change hooks. Someone tried to shut down the RPC endpoints. They came back stronger, mirrored and re-optimized across an anonymized swarm of fork shards. You couldn't DDoS Forkborn Protocol. You could only catch up. The media ran think pieces. The cult of Forkborn. Is this the new DAO religion? Can you own a protocol that governs itself? Meet the man who fired his boss and then forked the company. And on the livestream circuit, Richard Dick Dalton finally reappeared. He looked smaller. No suit. Just a hoodie with the logo of a forgotten launch pad on it and eyes darting between tabs like he was hoping for a bailout that wouldn't come.
This isn't over,
He said, voice cracking under the fluorescent light.
He used inside information. It has to be illegal. You can't just fork reality.
The stream glitched, then dropped. It wasn't censorship. It was just irrelevance. The summit wasn't live-streamed. It didn't need to be. Everyone who mattered was already there, either in presence or through nodes. The projection shimmered against the cliffside, 100 feet tall and 20 milliseconds ahead of real time. Forkborn stood at its center, unassuming in a black tee, no logos, no filters. The silence before he spoke wasn't awkward. It was reverent. He looked out across a sea of pseudonyms and legends. Builder whales, DAO archaeologists, meme casters who turned syntax into currency. And then he said the thing that would be tattooed onto wallets for cycles to come. The difference between a meme and a movement is conviction. That was it. That was all. No pitch deck, no roadmap, no token launch. Just an invitation to fork what failed, to build what lasts, to own the keys before the hype, to write a ledger without asking for permission. The crowd didn't erupt. They nodded. Because they already knew. They weren't followers. They were forks in waiting. Forkborn left the stage as quietly as he entered, but the protocol didn't. It kept growing, kept mutating, not like a virus, like a forest, where every burned-down chain became fertile soil, where rugged tokens took root again, where builders were remembered, not extracted. As for Dick, he's probably still on some dead decks trying to arbitrage ghosts. Forkborn never tried to go viral, he just refused to disappear. And in the end, that was enough. One Friday, one fork, one legend that rewrote the rules. Crypto, yeah.